All right. So the last time we left off Charlie, we could tell that he was not only getting smarter intellectually, mentally, we saw that he was changing emotionally. He started to develop feelings for one particular individual. Yep, Miss Kinnean was the individual that he was developing feelings for. He starts to clearly uh, become much brighter, so much so that people don't realize that they're sharing ideas in front of him that might become difficult. The doctors also established that that they thought that their findings, their experiment was going to be permanent for him, and he was going to be healthy and be intelligent probably for the rest of his life. Um, but let's get in to see how he changes during this first part of part 6. May 15th, Dr. Strauss is very angry at me for not having written any progress reports in 2 weeks. He's justified because the lab is now paying me a regular salary. I told him I was too busy thinking and reading. When I pointed out that writing was just a slow process, that it made me impatient with my poor handwriting, he suggested that I learn to type. It's much easier to write now because I can type nearly 75 words a minute. Dr. Strauss continually reminds me of the need to speak and write simply so that people will be able to understand me. I do want to interject just one small part that since this was 1965, it was unlikely, well, he wouldn't have been writing on a computer, typing on a computer, he would have been typing on a typewriter. But as he gets smarter, as Charlie gets smarter, it doesn't mean that all of his skills are also improving. So his handwriting is still very slow. It's still very poor because he learned that at a much earlier age. It would take practice to bring it up to an adult level. What do you guys think about that last sentence? Dr. Strauss continually reminds me of the need to speak and write simply so that people will be able to understand me. What do you think that shows about Charlie and the amount he has changed? Yeah, I think you're right. I think what you're seeing is that he's starting to talk higher than them. His intelligence is becoming greater than other people, and it's hard for them to understand what he is now saying. All right. I'll try and review all the things that happened to me during the last 2 weeks. Algernon and I were presented to the American Psychological Association sitting in convention with the World Psychological Association last Tuesday. Both of those are very real things, the American Psychological Association and the World Psychological Association. We created quite a sensation. Dr. Niemer and Dr. Strauss were proud of us. I suspect that Dr. Niemer, who is 60, 10 years older than Dr. Strauss, finds it necessary to see tangible, real results of his work, undoubtedly the result of pressure by Mrs. Niemer. Contrary to my earlier impressions of him, I realized that Dr. Niemer is not at all a genius. He has a very good mind, but it struggles under the specter of self-doubt. He wants people to take him for a genius. Therefore, it is important for him to feel that his work is accepted by the world. I believe that Dr. Niemer was afraid of further delay because he worried that someone else might make a discovery along these lines and take the credit from him. Dr. Strauss, on the other hand, might be called a genius, although I feel that his areas of knowledge are too limited. He was educated in the tradition of narrow specialization. The broader aspects of background were neglected far more than necessary, even for a neurosurgeon. So notice he says, as a neurosurgeon, he may not have been educated enough in a broad fashion to understand important things as a neurosurgeon. I was shocked to learn that the only ancient languages he could read were Latin, Greek, and Hebrew, and that he knows almost nothing of mathematics beyond the elementary levels of calculus of variations. When he admitted this to me, I found myself almost annoyed. It was as if he'd hidden this part of himself in order to deceive me, pretending, as do many people, I've discovered to be what he is not. No one I've ever known is what he appears to be on the surface. Dr. Niemer appears to be uncomfortable around me. Sometimes when I try to talk to him, he just looks at me strangely and turns away. I was angry at first when Dr. Strauss told me I was giving Dr. Niemer an inferiority complex. I thought he was mocking me, and I'm oversensitive at being made fun of. I'm gonna pause right there for a minute. How smart has Charlie become? Like, how smart is he compared to the people around him? Um, what what do you guys see as the changes in Charlie? Yeah, you're right. That he's said that Dr. Niemer's now become uncomfortable with him. But why? You think he's smarter than them? Why do you say that? What makes you believe that? Good. You're right. Yes, an inferiority complex is exactly what it sounds like. You're making someone feel inferior to you. They feel smaller than you. Um, so yeah, Charlie has become smarter than the doctors that performed the experiment on him. How was I to know? How was I to know that a highly respected psycho-experimentalist like Niemer was unacquainted with Hindustani and Chinese? Those are two different languages that apparently Charlie knows. It's absurd when you consider the work that is being done in India and China today in the very field of his study. I asked Dr. Strauss how Niemer could refute Rahajamani's attack on his method and results, and if Niemer couldn't even read them in the first place. That strange look on Dr. Strauss's face can mean only one of two things. Either he doesn't want to tell Niemer what they're saying in India, or else, and this worries me, Dr. Strauss doesn't know either. I must be careful to speak and write clearly and simply so that people won't laugh. Notice Charlie saying he's having to dumb things down for us. He's having to worry about what Dr. Strauss and Dr. Niemer know from another Dr. Rahajamati, who is saying that this experiment doesn't work the way that Dr. Strauss and Dr. Niemer did it. But they don't even know that because they can't even read the information that's being published. All right, so his intelligence is affecting one relationship. Let's see how it affects another. May 18th, I'm very disturbed. I saw Miss Kinnean last night for the first time in over a week. I tried to avoid all discussions of intellectual concepts and to keep the conversation on a simple, everyday level. But she just stared at me blankly and asked me what I meant about the mathematical variance equivalent in Doberman's fifth concerto. Now, all of that information is made up. There is no Doberman's fifth concerto. There's nothing called the mathematical variance equivalent of music. But he's trying to say that he's analyzing music and trying to show how smart Charlie is becoming. He thinks that's everyday conversation. When I tried to explain, she stopped me and laughed. I guess I got angry, but I suspect I'm approaching her on the wrong level. No matter what I try to discuss with her, I am unable to communicate. I must review Vorstadt's equations on levels of semantic progression. Notice he says he's having trouble communicating with a woman, with Miss Kinney and someone he cares about, and he says he's going to review a book on semantic progression, so how language is set up and what he's trying to say to people. I find that I don't communicate with people much anymore. Thank God for books and music and things I can think about. I'm alone in my apartment at Mrs. Flynn's boarding house most of the time and seldom speak to anyone. Why did Charlie want to become smart in the first place? What was one of the reasons, one of the main reasons? What did he think he would gain and people would think of him as he got smarter? Good, that he was quote unquote normal. And yeah, he would become friends with them. People would like him. That's what he wanted to begin with, is he wanted to be liked. Miss Kinnean does like him. He liked Miss Kinnean the last time we read. Now he's having trouble communicating with her. And he actually says, thank God for books and music and things I can think about. I'm alone in my apartment as Mrs. Flynn at Mrs. Flynn's boarding house most of the time and seldom speak to people or seldom speak to anyone. So now he doesn't mind being alone. That's where he'd rather be. Significantly huge change in Charlie right there. Really big change. All right, I'll give you time to work on the questions yourself.